Let's get a read on all of this. Bringing the Hill White House reporter here, Jordan Fabian. We've got former Senator Evan Bayh of Indiana and former Nevada GOP Chair Amy Tarkanian. Amy, to you on this relationship that rekindled again, I noticed when the president talked about his optimism after meeting the Saudi prince that he could see and is very hopeful longer term of promising relationship there, that was the one point at which Benjamin Netanyahu did not nod his head. Obviously, that is a Herculean effort to get those two countries on the same page, let alone even close to the relations that Egypt and, for example, Israel enjoy, huh?
Well, I was not able to see that nod, unfortunately, while I was able to hear what was going on.
I'll save you the trouble.
Oh, you said there was not a nod.
Not a nod.
Oh, okay, I see. Well, you know, this whole trip is actually, it's historical, and I think that it's positive overall. What I did find interesting was when Benjamin Netanyahu actually said that this was real hope for change, for the first time, for realistic peace. That was a nice little step at the prior administration.
You know, I caught that as well. Senator, much has been made. Every president, Republican or Democrat, wants to be the one to broker a lasting peace between, for example, the Palestinians and the Israelis. It never comes to pass or lasts very long. Is it your sense that maybe the environment might be right now between these players? Joins so much unanimously in the Arab world, for example, about anger toward Iran, and that might be a sort of a uniting factor here.
Well, Neil, hope springs eternal, and the relations between Israel and some of the Sunni states really have never been better. Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, some of the others, and it's because of the antipathy, the joint antipathy toward Iran and some of the things that are going on in Syria. But the real problem in brokering a lasting peace agreement between the Israelis and the Palestinians has not been because of a lack of the Israelis from time to time being willing to take risks for peace, or the Americans, our country's willingness to support such an endeavor. The problem has been the divisions within the Palestinians. And so you've got Hamas controlling the Gaza Strip and representing a fair amount of Palestinian popular opinion. They just recently said that they finally were getting away from favoring the destruction of the state of Israel, but a fair amount of skepticism is in order there. My point simply is it takes two sides to make an agreement, and the Palestinians have just never really shown the willingness to make the hard decisions about the right of return in particular, the status of Jerusalem to a lesser extent, necessary to having a lasting agreement. That really is where the change needs to take place.
You're quite right. I mean, with the Palestinian Authority having some control over the Sinai, but not some of these other areas you allude to. I mean, you can broker a deal with one, but not have it with the other, and that does seem to be the case here. Having said that, Jordan Fabian, when you look at this, it comes at the same time the president is wrestling and having his folks, head back to Washington to wrestle with a budget that is already deemed controversial, that they're going to have to sell Medicaid and related, slowdown in spending, and leave Medicare and Social Security alone, keeping the president's promise. But even that is going to be heavy lifting with some of the things the president wants to do on tax cuts and the rest. And I'm just wondering, the added drama about where this Russia investigation goes, is the president stymied in these efforts when he does come back home from this trip?
Neil, I think the president has a very tough road to hoe in advancing things like health care in the Senate and his tax reform plan. You take a look at the budget as a immediate example of that. You know, all presidential budgets run into problems on Capitol Hill. It's Congress, after all, that sets spending levels. But the antipathy among congressional Republicans to some of these proposals, like cutting funding to Meals on Wheels, hasn't gone over too well with some of the rank and file. They're concerned, how are they supposed to sell that when they go back to their districts? So they have a really tough sales pitch on the budget proposal, and then you're talking about even more complex and controversial things like tax reform and health care.
Do you think, Senator Bayh, there will or could be a grand bargain where both sides put skin in the game here, risk a lot to get a deal that essentially makes them both look good?
Not in Obamacare, Neil. I think the divisions there are just simply too great, and I think the problems within the Republican Party are going to be significant as well. with the kind of Medicaid cuts, and many of the states have Republican governors and Republican state legislatures, which will make their lives much more difficult. So I think the Senate will vote on something. They may pass something, but whether the Freedom Caucus in the House will accept a more moderate bill from the Senate, that's an open question. I put that slightly less than 50-50 that gets done. But on taxes and infrastructure, I think the chances are better.
If that is the case, Amy, to the Senator's point that they can make some headway on that, on infrastructure, even though the figure I'm told now on the $1 trillion infrastructure program might be more like $200 billion, there's no way of knowing. But that with all the controversies, all the preoccupation on scandals and the rest, or perceived scandals, that they can still get this done. Republicans are hoping to get a tax package together, maybe with Democratic support, maybe not. Do you see that happening, the year ending with those kind of deals done?
I sure hope that something will come of this. You know, it's a shame when you have the mainstream media still attacking a president who's being revered and put on a pedestal internationally. And then you also hear of stories where the prime minister's wife is telling our first lady that the same thing is happening to them as well. So it's a shame that we can't just allow these people to go ahead and move forward with the things that are the most important for the people here and the people abroad. Things like tax reform, things like the budget, and making sure that everyone is able to put food on their table. I come from a state where one of the Republican governors actually expanded Medicaid. And sure, that's going to make him look like he's a hero now, but you know, down the road when this happens, you're going to go from the federal government paying 100% of Medicaid. Eventually, in a couple of years, it's only going to be 90%, and then it's going to make its way all the way back down to where the federal government will then do 50%, and the states will be 50% as well. And so probably about 70 to 80% of our budget is going to go towards Medicaid when it should go towards transportation and education. And we're last in the nation there.
Well, we'll see what happens. It's way too early to doom anything, but it does spring eternal to all of your points of view. Guys, I want to thank you very, very much.